3 years of happiness, and I should have known it was too fragile to last. I stood in Elio's private study, the room he'd promised would have no more secrets between us, staring at the medical file I'd found hidden in the false bottom of his desk drawer. My hands trembled as I read the words that shattered my carefully rebuilt world. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Advanced stage. Prognosis: 6 to 12 months without surgical intervention. High risk of sudden cardiac death. The date on the report was 6 months old. 6 months he'd known. 6 months he'd lied to me every single day while I believed we'd moved past deception, past the walls that had nearly destroyed us before they ever had a chance to build something real. Ginevra? Elio's voice came from the doorway, and I heard his sharp intake of breath when he saw what I held. Christo, how did I find it? I turned to face him, and the man I saw wasn't the powerful crime lord who commanded Chicago's underworld. He looked pale, exhausted, older than his 40 years. How had I not noticed? I was looking for the property deed you said was in your desk, for the gallery space you promised to help me acquire for the charity foundation. He crossed the room slowly, each step measured. Let me explain. Explain? The word came out sharp as broken glass. You're dying, Elio. Dying. And you didn't tell me, after everything we've been through. After I promised you honesty, and you promised me the same, you've been lying to me for half a year. I was protecting you. Don't. I held up my hand, rage and terror warring in my chest. Don't you dare use that excuse. We had this fight 3 years ago. You don't get to protect me from the truth. That's not how marriage works. That's not how partnership works. He flinched as if I'd struck him. I didn't want you to worry. Didn't want you to look at me the way you're looking at me right now, like I'm already dead. I'm looking at you like you're a liar. I threw the file onto his desk. What else haven't you told me? What other secrets are you keeping? Nothing else. His jaw tightened. Just this. Just that you're dying. I laughed, but it sounded broken even to my own ears. Just that every morning I wake up next to you might be the last. Just that our daughter might lose her father before she's old enough to remember him. Just that small thing. Ginevra, does Bruno know? I demanded. Does Dr. Caesar? His silence was answer enough. Of course they do. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to contain the scream building in my throat. Everyone knows, except your wife. The woman who's supposed to be your partner, your equal. I'm just the fragile thing you need to shield from reality. That's not true. He moved toward me, but I stepped back. The hurt in his eyes mirrored my own. You're the strongest person I know, Ginevra. But this, I couldn't burden you with this. Burden me? The words exploded from me. You think dying alone is better than letting me help you. You think keeping this secret is protecting me when all you're doing is stealing whatever time we have left? There is no time left. His control finally cracked, his voice rising to match mine. The surgery has a 40% survival rate. 40%, Ginevra. That means there's a 60% chance I die on that table. And if I survive, I'll be weak for months. Vulnerable. And in this life, showing vulnerability gets you killed. Gets your family killed. So your plan was to just drop dead one day and leave me to pick up the pieces? I shook my head, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. Leave Elena without a father. Leave me without you. All because you were too proud to admit you're human, that you need help. My plan, he said quietly, was to handle this myself, to settle my affairs, ensure you and Elena would be protected, provided for, to make sure that when I'm gone, no one would dare threaten what's mine. I'm not yours to protect like property. The old argument, the one we'd supposedly resolved years ago, was back with vicious clarity. I'm your wife, Elio, your partner, and partners don't keep dying from each other. He sank into his desk chair, the fight draining from him. In that moment, he looked every bit the dying man the medical file declared him to be. I'm terrified, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Not of dying. I've made peace with that. But of what happens to you and Elena when I'm gone. Of leaving you vulnerable in a world that will see you as weak without me. I wanted to go to him, to hold him, to tell him everything would be okay. But the betrayal was too fresh, the hurt too raw. You've been treating me like the same sheltered girl you married, I said instead. The one you claimed not to want, the one you thought couldn't handle your world. But I'm not her anymore, Elio. I proved that when I ran your organization while you recovered from Vitale's attack. I proved it when I found Vitale and brought him to you. I've proven it 100 times over these past 3 years. I know. Do you? I challenged. Because from where I'm standing, you still see me as something fragile that needs protecting. Not as the woman who can stand beside you through anything, including this. He looked up at me, and I saw my own pain reflected in his gray eyes. What do you want from me, Ginevra? The truth, always the truth. I moved to the window, staring out at the Chicago skyline that had become as familiar as my own heartbeat. And I want you to fight. Not alone, but with me. To take the surgery, to let me help you through recovery, to trust that I'm strong enough to protect what's ours while you heal. The surgery has a 40% survival rate, I interrupted, which means 40% chance you live. Those aren't terrible odds, Elio, but doing nothing, that's a 100% chance you die. And I won't accept that. I won't let you give up because you're too proud to be vulnerable. It's not about pride. He stood, crossing to me. This time I didn't step away when he took my hands in his. It's about legacy. If I'm weak, if I show weakness, the other families will sense it like sharks scenting blood. They'll come for us. For you. For Elena. Then we make sure they don't see weakness, I said, a plan already forming in my mind. We make sure they see strength. My strength. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? I mean it's time I stopped being the boss's wife and started being the boss myself. I held his gaze steadily. You have the surgery, you take whatever time you need to recover, and I run the family in your absence. Ginevra. You said yourself I'm the strongest person you know, I reminded him. Prove you meant it. Give me control. Real control, not just managing charities and attending galas. Let me into the business side, the real business. Teach me everything you know, and then trust me to use it. He stared at me for a long moment, something like awe dawning in his expression. You're serious. Completely. I squeezed his hands. You want to protect us? Then give me the tools to protect myself. Stop shielding me from your world and make me part of it. Truly part of it. The other families will never accept. They'll accept what we tell them to accept, I interrupted. You're Elio Vieira. When you say your wife speaks with your authority, they'll listen. And if they don't, I smiled, cold and calculating in a way I'd learned from watching him. We'll make them. A slow smile curved his lips, the first genuine one I'd seen since finding that damned medical file. You've been paying attention. I've had an excellent teacher. I pulled one hand free to cup his face. But Elio, if you ever lie to me like this again, if you ever keep something this important from me, there won't be a third chance. I meant my vows. For better or worse, in sickness and health. But I can't honor them if you won't let me. I know. He leaned into my touch. I'm sorry, Amore. I was wrong. I should have told you the moment I found out. Yes, you should have. I wouldn't let him off easily. Wouldn't pretend this didn't fundamentally shake my trust. But we'll deal with that later. Right now we need to plan. Who knows about your condition? Bruno, Dr. Caesar, and my lawyer. He grimaced. I had everything arranged. New wills, trust funds, security protocols for after you died and left me to figure everything out alone. I finished flatly. Well, those plans are changing. Starting now. Over the next hour, Elio walked me through everything he'd kept hidden. The medical reports, the specialist consultations, the surgical options he'd been considering and rejecting. Dr. Caesar had recommended a surgeon in Switzerland, a woman named Dr. Alba Moretti, who specialized in exactly this type of high-risk cardiac surgery. The surgery itself isn't the only risk, Elio explained, pulling up files on his computer. The recovery period is extensive, months of limited activity, of being unable to work, of being human instead of superhuman, I supplied. I understand, which is why we need to start my transition into leadership now, before the surgery. That way, when you go under, there's no power vacuum, no appearance of weakness. He studied me with those penetrating gray eyes. You've really thought this through. I've been thinking about it since Vitale's attack, I admitted. About what would happen if something happened to you. About what I would do, how I would survive. I just didn't think I'd have to implement it so soon. I'm sorry, he said again, and I heard the weight of genuine remorse in his voice. For keeping this from you, for not trusting you with it. Show me you're sorry, I said, turning back to face him fully. Show me by treating me as your equal from this moment forward. No more secrets. No more protection through deception. We're in this together, Elio. All of it. He pulled me into his arms, and I let him, breathing in his familiar scent of sandalwood and expensive cologne. Together, he agreed against my hair. I'll call Dr. Alba tomorrow, schedule the surgery, and tonight we tell Bruno and start planning your coronation. His hand slid up my spine. The families need to see that Ginevra Vieira isn't just my wife. She's my partner, my equal, my successor if necessary. The word successor sent a chill through me, but I pushed past it. Then let's make sure they never forget it. That night, after Elena was asleep and Bruno had been summoned for an emergency meeting, I stood beside Elio in his study while he outlined the plan to his most trusted lieutenant. You want Mrs. Vieira to take over operations? Bruno's weathered face showed surprise, but not disapproval. While you undergo surgery? Not just while I'm in surgery, Elio corrected. Starting now. Ginevra will begin attending all meetings, learning all aspects of the business. By the time I go to Switzerland, she'll be ready to run everything in my absence. Bruno's gaze shifted to me, assessing. With all respect, boss, some of the old guard won't like this. Women don't run families. Women don't usually, I corrected, stepping forward. But I'm not usual, Bruno. I found Vitale when everyone else failed. I commanded Elio's men and they followed. I've proven I can think strategically, act decisively. The only question is whether the old guard is smart enough to recognize an asset when they see one. A smile tugged at Bruno's lips. The boss taught you well. The boss married well, Elio countered. He just took too long to realize it. Over the following weeks, my education began in earnest. Elio walked me through every aspect of his empire. The legitimate businesses that provided cover and cash flow, the less legitimate operations that provided real power, the network of alliances and obligations that held the entire structure together. I learned about the shipping routes that moved not just legal cargo, but also things that never appeared on manifests. About the construction companies that laundered money through inflated contracts. About the politicians and judges whose loyalty was purchased and maintained through careful application of carrots and sticks. It was dizzying and sometimes nauseating, but I absorbed it all. Because Elio was right about one thing. Knowledge was power. And I needed every scrap of power I could gather. The key, Elio explained one evening as we reviewed territory maps, is understanding that everything is negotiation. Violence is expensive, messy, draws attention. Better to make people believe cooperating with you is in their best interest. And when they don't believe that, his smile was cold, then you remind them what happens to people who don't cooperate. But you do it precisely, strategically. You don't burn down the forest to catch one rabbit. I thought about Vitale, about the precision with which Elio had eliminated that threat. You make it sound like chess. It is chess. Except the pieces are people, and losing doesn't just mean game over. It means death. He studied me carefully. Are you sure you want this, Ginevra? Once you step into this world fully, there's no going back to being just the charitable wife who attends galas. I was never just that, I reminded him. You just didn't see it. But I do want this, not because I crave power, but because I refuse to be helpless. I refuse to be the widow who gets devoured by sharks because she doesn't know how to swim in deep water. You won't be a widow, he said firmly. I'm going to survive this surgery. 40% chance, I reminded him gently, which means we prepare for both outcomes. If you live, I'm your partner in running this empire. If you don't, my voice caught despite my best efforts, then I'll run it alone, and I'll be good at it, because you're going to teach me everything. He pulled me close, his heart beating steadily against my ear. For now. You're terrifying when you're determined. Good, I murmured, because that's exactly what they need to see. Not the boss's fragile wife, but someone as dangerous as you are. Someone who can't be intimidated, manipulated, or destroyed. The first test came 2 weeks later, when Elio called a meeting of the 5 family heads who controlled Chicago's underworld alongside the Vieiras. It was held in neutral territory, an upscale restaurant that Elio owned, but that served as a traditional meeting ground. I dressed carefully. A tailored black suit that was elegant but severe, my grandmother's ruby necklace as my only jewelry, my hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. I looked like power, because that's what I needed them to see. Remember, Elio murmured as we entered, they'll test you, push boundaries, make crude comments, try to rattle you. Don't react. Show them you're made of steel. The 5 men were already seated when we arrived. Giovanni Russo, the oldest and most traditional. Leon Conti, Elio's former mentor who'd been semi-retired for the past 5 years. Noel Torres, who controlled the South Side. Mario Fabri, who ran the docks. And Dario Marchetti, younger brother of the traitor who'd tried to kill Elio during the Vitale affair. All of them stood when we entered, a sign of respect for Elio. But their eyes tracked to me with curiosity and, in some cases, barely concealed disdain. Gentlemen, Elio said, his hand at the small of my back. Thank you for coming. I have an announcement that affects all of us. We sat, and I forced myself to meet each man's gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. As you know, Elio continued, the Vieira family has grown significantly over the past 3 years. Our territories are secure, our businesses thriving, our alliances strong. This success didn't happen by accident. It happened because I had an excellent partner helping me see opportunities others missed. Leon raised an eyebrow. Your wife has been advising you on business? My wife has been far more than an advisor, Elio corrected. She's been my strategist, my sounding board, my eyes in places where I cannot go. The charity foundation she runs has given us connections to politicians and businessmen who would never meet with someone like me. Her work has opened doors that force could never breach. That's all well and good, Giovanni said, his tone patronizing. Women have their uses, but I assume you didn't call us here to praise your wife's charity work. I felt Elio tense beside me, but I placed a hand on his arm. This was my fight. No, I said clearly, drawing all eyes to me. He called you here to inform you that I'll be taking a more active role in Vieira operations, starting immediately. The silence that followed was deafening. Dario Marchetti was the first to laugh. A short, sharp bark of disbelief that cut through the tension like a knife. You're joking, he said, looking between Elio and me. This is a joke, right? Do I look like I'm joking? I met his gaze steadily, refusing to blink first. With all respect, Mrs. Vieira, Noel Torres interjected, his tone suggesting he had very little respect at all. This life isn't for women. It requires a certain ruthlessness that women don't possess, I finished for him. I'm curious, Mr. Torres. Have you met your own wife? I've heard she's quite ruthless when it comes to managing your household finances. A few surprised chuckles from around the table. This isn't about managing finances, Giovanni said, his voice harder. This is about making decisions that affect territories, alliances, lives. Decisions that sometimes require bloodshed. I'm aware, I replied calmly. I was there when Marcus Vitale tried to kill my husband. I was the one who found him when everyone else had given up the search. And I was the one who delivered him to Elio for judgment. Does that sound like someone who can't handle bloodshed? Leon Conti, who had been silent until now, leaned forward with interest. I'd heard rumors about that. You really found Vitale? Through his sister, I confirmed. Everyone was looking for him in the obvious places. I reasoned that he'd used someone he trusted, someone above suspicion. His sister led us right to him. Lucky guess, Dario muttered. Strategic thinking, Elio corrected, his voice carrying a warning edge. Which is exactly why Ginevra will be invaluable to our operations going forward. Forward to what exactly? Giovanni pressed. What's really going on here, Elio? You've never needed a woman's input before. This was the moment when we either gained their cooperation or lost their respect entirely. Elio's hand found mine under the table, squeezing once. Then he released it, giving me the floor. Elio has a medical condition, I said, deciding honesty was our best strategy. He'll be undergoing surgery in Switzerland in 6 weeks. The recovery will take months. During that time, someone needs to run Vieira operations. That someone will be me. The explosion of voices was immediate. Absolutely not. This is insane. The other families will never accept. Gentlemen, Elio's voice cut through the chaos like a whip crack. Enough. Silence fell again, but the tension was palpable. Ginevra has my complete confidence and my complete authority, Elio continued. During my recovery, any agreement made with her is an agreement made with me. Any disrespect shown to her is disrespect shown to me. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Leon said, surprising me by being the first to acknowledge it. But, Elio, you have to understand our position. This is unprecedented. The old families, the traditionalists, they won't accept a woman giving orders. Then they'll learn to adapt, I said before Elio could respond. Because this is happening whether they accept it or not. The only question is whether they want to work with me or against me. Dario leaned back in his chair, a sneer on his face. And what happens if we choose against? The threat was implicit. If they didn't cooperate, they might make a move against the Vieira family while Elio was weak. Then you'll discover what happens when you underestimate me, I replied, my voice soft but carrying an edge I'd learned from Elio. Just like Vitale did. How did that work out for him? Dario's face flushed with anger, but before he could respond, Leon laughed. She's got fire, I'll give her that. He looked at Elio. You're serious about this? Completely. And you trust her to run things without running them into the ground? I trust her to run things better than some of the men at this table could, Elio said bluntly. She's smart, strategic, and she understands that power comes from intelligence, not just force. Giovanni shook his head slowly. This is a mistake, Elio, a dangerous one. But if you're determined to make it, I won't stand in your way. Consider Russo family neutral on this matter. It wasn't an endorsement, but it wasn't opposition either. I'd take it. Torres family as well, Noel said grudgingly. Though I think you're both crazy. Mario Fabri nodded. The docks will continue operating as usual. As long as business isn't disrupted, I have no problem with Mrs. Vieira's interim leadership. 3 families neutralized. That left Leon and Dario. I'll support you, Leon said, looking directly at me. On one condition. Name it, Elio said. I want to be Mrs. Vieira's advisor during your recovery. Someone she can call for guidance on matters of delicacy. It was a reasonable request, and probably a smart one. Leon had decades of experience and was widely respected. Agreed, I said before Elio could. I'd value your counsel, Mr. Conti. Leon, please, if we're going to be working together, we should be on familiar terms. That left Dario, who was glaring at me with undisguised hostility. And you? Elio asked him. What's the Marchetti family's position? My position, Dario said slowly, is that this is the worst idea I've ever heard. But I also remember what happened to my brother when he challenged you, Elio. So I'll stay out of it. But don't expect my cooperation. Or my respect. I don't expect either, I replied calmly. I'll earn them, just like I've earned everything else in this life. The meeting ended shortly after, with the families filtering out one by one. Leon stayed behind, approaching me with a calculating look. You did well, he said. Better than I expected, actually. Thanks. I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or not. Word of advice, he continued, glancing at Elio, who was speaking with Bruno near the door. Dario's pride is wounded. His brother died because he challenged Elio. And now he sees a woman taking power where his brother failed. He'll be a problem. I figured as much, I admitted. Watch him carefully. And when he makes his move, because he will, hit back twice as hard. It's the only language men like him understand. With that cryptic warning, Leon departed, leaving Elio and me alone with Bruno. Well, I asked, how did I do? You did perfectly, Elio said, pulling me into his arms. Proud doesn't begin to cover it. 3 neutral, 1 supportive, 1 hostile, Bruno summarized. Could have been worse. Could have been better, I countered. Dario's going to be a problem. Then we'll handle him when the time comes, Elio said. For now, let's focus on getting you fully integrated into operations before I leave for Switzerland. The weeks that followed were the most intense of my life. Elio took me to every meeting, introduced me to every contact, walked me through every decision. I met with shipping captains and union bosses, politicians and judges, businessmen and criminals. Each interaction was a test, and I felt the weight of scrutiny on me constantly. Some accepted me easily, seeing the value in staying on the Vieira's good side, regardless of who was giving the orders. Others were openly skeptical, questioning my decisions, pushing boundaries to see if I would break. I didn't break. When a union boss tried to renegotiate his contract, thinking I'd be easier to manipulate than Elio, I called his bluff and shut down the entire operation for a week until he came crawling back. When a politician demanded twice his usual payment, I had Bruno deliver photographs of the man with his mistress. Not a threat, just a reminder of who held the real power. I learned to read people, to identify weakness and leverage it. I learned when to be merciful and when to be merciless. I learned that power wasn't about force. It was about control. And slowly, grudgingly, even the skeptics began to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, Elio hadn't made a mistake in trusting me. The night before Elio was scheduled to leave for Switzerland, I found him in our bedroom, staring out at the Chicago skyline with a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Second thoughts?" I asked, joining him at the window. "About the surgery?" "No." He pulled me against his side. "About leaving you to handle this alone?" "Yes." "I won't be alone," I reminded him. "I have Bruno, Leon, the entire organization. It's not the same as having me here." "No," I agreed, "it's not. But Elio, I need you to trust me. Really trust me. Not just say the words, but believe them. Can you do that?" He turned to face me fully, his hands framing my face. "I trust you with everything, Ginevra. My life, my empire, my legacy. You're the strongest person I know." "Then prove it," I challenged. "Go to Switzerland, have the surgery, fight to survive, and let me handle things here. No calling to check on me every day, no trying to manage from your hospital bed. Let me do this my way." His jaw tightened, clearly struggling with the idea of complete relinquishment of control. "I'll call once a week," I compromised, "to let you know how things are going, but operations are mine until you're recovered. Agreed?" "Agreed," he said finally, though it clearly cost him. "But Ginevra, if anything goes wrong, if Dario or anyone else makes a move against you, then I'll handle it." I rose on my toes to kiss him. "Stop trying to protect me from the life you brought me into. I'm not that sheltered girl anymore. I'm your partner, your equal. Trust that I can do this. I do trust you." His arms tightened around me. "I'm just terrified of losing you." "Then survive the surgery," I whispered against his lips. "Come back to me, and when you do, you'll find everything exactly as you left it, maybe even better." We made love that night with an intensity born of fear and love, and the knowledge that this might be the last time. Every touch was a promise, every kiss a prayer. Afterward, lying in the darkness with his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, I made my own silent vow. I would prove to everyone, to the families, to the skeptics, to Elio himself, that I was more than just the wife of a powerful man. I was powerful in my own right. The next morning, I stood on the tarmac and watched Elio's private jet take off, carrying him toward Switzerland, and a surgery that might save him or kill him. Bruno stood beside me, his expression grim. "You ready for this, Mrs. Vieira?" he asked. I thought about everything Elio had taught me, everything I'd learned, everything I'd become over the past 3 years. "Yes," I said simply. "Let's get to work." The first week without Elio was the hardest. Not because of the work, I'd been preparing for that, but because every morning I woke up alone in our bed, reaching for him before remembering he was thousands of miles away, already in surgery or recovering from it. Dr. Alba had been clear. The operation would take 12 hours, followed by intensive care, then weeks of careful monitoring before he could even think about traveling home. I'd promised not to call obsessively, but that didn't stop me from checking my phone every 10 minutes, waiting for updates from Bruno's contact in Switzerland. "Mrs. Vieira," my assistant interrupted my brooding. We were in Elio's study, my study now, I had to remind myself, reviewing shipping manifests. "Mr. Torres is here for your 10 o'clock meeting." I straightened in the leather chair that still smelled faintly of Elio's cologne, schooling my features into the mask of confidence I'd perfected over the past month. "Send him in." Noel Torres entered with the same skeptical expression he'd worn at every interaction since that initial family meeting. He took the seat across from me without being invited, a small power play I chose to ignore. "I'll be direct," he said without preamble. "The South Side routes are mine. They've always been mine. Elio understood that. And I understand it too," I replied calmly, "which is why I'm not asking to take them over. I'm asking for a temporary increase in your processing fees." His eyes narrowed. Why? Because 3 of our regular shipping contacts have been arrested in a federal sting operation. Until we can establish new relationships, we need to route through your channels. The increased volume justifies increased compensation. How much increased? I named a figure that was generous but not extravagant, enough to make it worth his while, not enough to seem desperate. Torres leaned back, considering. And when your regular contacts are back online? Then we return to the previous arrangement. This is temporary, Noel. I'm not trying to encroach on your territory. I'm trying to keep our mutual business flowing smoothly during a difficult transition period. He studied me for a long moment. Elio would have just told me to do it. Wouldn't have asked, wouldn't have offered extra compensation. I'm not Elio, I said simply. I'm building my own relationships, my own way of doing business. You can either profit from that, or we can have a more traditional negotiation. Your choice. A smile tugged at his lips. You drive a hard bargain, Mrs. Vieira. I learned from the best. He stood, extending his hand. You have a deal. And Ginevra? For what it's worth, I think you might actually pull this off. After he left, I allowed myself a small smile of victory. One potential problem neutralized. My phone buzzed with a text from Bruno. Surgery underway. No updates for 8 to 10 hours minimum. My stomach clenched, but I pushed the fear aside. I had work to do. Falling apart wouldn't help Elio. Wouldn't help me. Wouldn't help anyone. The afternoon brought a meeting with our construction company managers, where I had to navigate a dispute about union contracts without letting them see how little I actually understood about building codes and labor regulations. I bluffed my way through it, making decisive rulings that could be adjusted later if necessary, projecting confidence I didn't entirely feel. By evening, I was exhausted and still no word from Switzerland. Go home, Bruno said, finding me still at my desk at 8 p.m. Get some rest. I'll call you the moment we hear anything. I can't just sit at home waiting, I protested. Then don't sit. But you're no good to anyone if you work yourself to death before the boss even makes it through recovery. His weathered face softened. He'd want you taking care of yourself. He was right, but that didn't make leaving any easier. The estate felt cavernous without Elio. I checked on Elena, already asleep, kissed her forehead and whispered promises I hoped I could keep. Then I retreated to our bedroom, changed into one of Elio's shirts, and tried not to think about the surgery happening half a world away. I must have dozed off, because Bruno's call jolted me awake at 2 a.m. He's out of surgery, Bruno said without preamble. It went well. Better than expected, actually. Dr. Alba says the next 48 hours are critical, but she's optimistic. Relief washed through me so intensely I thought I might be sick. Can I talk to him? He's sedated, won't be conscious for at least another day. But Ginevra? Bruno paused. He made it through the worst of it. The odds are in his favor now. I thanked him and ended the call, then promptly burst into tears I'd been holding back for days. Elio was alive. The surgery was successful. Now I just needed to prove I could hold his empire together while he healed. The second week brought my first real challenge. Dario Marchetti requested a meeting, ostensibly to discuss territorial boundaries on the north side, where our operations bordered his. I agreed, bringing Bruno and 2 other trusted men, meeting in the same neutral restaurant where Elio had announced my new role. Dario arrived with his own entourage, his expression smug in a way that set off alarm bells in my head. Mrs. Vieira, he said, settling into his chair with exaggerated casualness. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I have a business proposition for you. I'm listening. The Northside territories have been disputed for years. Under Elio's leadership, we maintained an uneasy peace. But now, he spread his hands, circumstances have changed. I'm proposing a reallocation of those territories, specifically, the docks and warehouses you currently control. You want me to just hand over valuable assets? I kept my voice level despite my rising anger. On what grounds? On the grounds that you don't have the manpower to protect them properly, he replied. With Elio gone, you're vulnerable. I'm offering to take those territories under Marchetti protection, for your own good. How generous. I didn't bother hiding my sarcasm. And what do I get in return for this charitable donation? My assurance that the rest of your territories remain unmolested. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Considerate. Insurance. So there it was. The challenge Leon had warned me about. Dario wasn't asking. He was threatening. Give him what he wanted or face the consequences. Every eye in the room was on me, waiting to see how I'd respond. This was the moment that would define whether I could truly command respect or whether I was just keeping Elio's seat warm. No, I said simply. Dario's smile faded. Excuse me? I said no. Those territories are Vieira territories. They remain Vieira territories. And if you have a problem with that, we can discuss it the traditional way. The traditional way. The way that ended with blood. You're threatening me? Dario leaned forward, his voice dropping dangerously. You've been in charge for 2 weeks, and you think you can threaten a family that's been in this city for 3 generations? I'm not threatening you, I corrected. I'm explaining reality. You're trying to exploit what you perceive as weakness. But here's what you're missing. Dario, I'm not weak. I'm just different than what you're used to. And that makes me more dangerous, not less. I stood, signaling the meeting was over. The answer is no. The territories stay with the Vieiras. If you want to push this issue, you know where to find me. But I promise you, you won't like how it ends. I walked out before he could respond, Bruno and my men falling in behind me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. But I kept my spine straight, my stride confident. Once we were in the car, Bruno exhaled slowly. That could have gone better. Or worse, I countered. He showed his hand. Now we know he's planning a move. And we know you won't back down. Bruno's expression was approving. The boss would be proud. The boss would tell me I should have anticipated this and prevented it before it became a confrontation. Maybe, Bruno conceded, but he'd also say that sometimes you have to draw a line and dare people to cross it. You just drew yours. That night, I called Switzerland for my weekly update. Elio was awake now, recovering faster than expected, though still weak. How are things there? He asked, his voice raspy but stronger than I'd expected. Interesting, I hedged, not wanting to worry him. Torres is cooperating, Leon has been invaluable, and the business is running smoothly. And Dario? Of course he'd zero in on what I wasn't saying. Made his move, I admitted. Tried to take the North Side territories. I told him no. Silence on the other end. Then, how did he take it? Not well. I'm expecting retaliation. Ginevra? I can handle it, I interrupted. I drew the line like you taught me. Now I have to defend it. That's how this works, right? Yes, but... He sighed, frustrated. I should be there. You're exactly where you need to be. Getting better, getting stronger. I softened my tone. Elio, I need to do this myself. If I run to you for help every time someone challenges me, I'll never have their respect. You understand that? I understand it. I don't like it, but I understand it. Then trust me to handle Dario my way. Another pause. Be careful. He's more dangerous than you think. So am I replied. That's what he's about to learn. After hanging up, I called Bruno. I need you to pull together everything we have on Dario Marchetti. Every business, every property, every transaction. I want to know where he's vulnerable. You're going after him? I'm preparing to defend myself, I corrected. But if he comes at me, I'm going to make sure he regrets it. The attack came 3 days later. One of our warehouse shipments was hijacked. The truck stopped by armed men who wore masks but whose allegiance was obvious. They took the entire cargo, legitimate goods worth over $1 million, and left a message spray-painted on the warehouse wall. Compliments of the Marchetti family. It was a direct challenge, a theft designed to make me look weak and incompetent. I stood in the warehouse staring at that message, while Bruno waited for my response. "He wants a war," I said quietly. "Looks like it. Then let's give him one. But not the kind he expects." Over the next week, I implemented a plan that would have made Elio proud. I didn't strike back with violence. That's what Dario expected, what he was prepared for. Instead, I hit him where it hurt most: his wallet. Using the intelligence Bruno had gathered, I discovered that Dario had overextended himself recently, borrowing heavily from associates to expand his operations. His cash flow was tight, dependent on several key businesses running smoothly. I systematically disrupted every one of them. The restaurant that laundered his money suddenly failed a health inspection, forcing it to close for renovations. The shipping company he used lost its contract with the Port Authority due to administrative concerns. The construction projects that provided cover for his operations tied up in permit disputes that would take months to resolve. None of it could be traced directly back to me. I used the connections Elio had built, the favors he'd accumulated, the politicians and bureaucrats who owed the Vieira family. I pulled strings I didn't even know existed until I started looking. Within 2 weeks, Dario's cash flow had gone from tight to critical. Leon called me personally. "I don't know how you did it, but whatever you're doing to Marchetti is causing him serious problems. His people are starting to jump ship." "I have no idea what you're talking about," I replied innocently. Though I did hear he was having some business difficulties. Such a shame. Leon's laugh was genuine. "Elio taught you well. This is more elegant than anything he would have done." "Elio would have gone in with guns blazing," I agreed. "I prefer a scalpel to a sledgehammer." The final blow came when I arranged for Dario's biggest creditor, a man who owed Elio several significant favors, to call in his loans. All of them. Immediately. Dario couldn't pay. Which meant he either had to liquidate assets at a loss or default and face the consequences. He called for a meeting. This time his tone was very different. "You're destroying me," he said bluntly when we met. Gone was the smug confidence. Now he looked haggard, desperate. "I'm defending my territory," I corrected. "You hit me, I hit back. That's how this works." "You're a vindictive bitch." "I'm a woman who keeps her promises," I replied calmly. "I told you that you wouldn't like how this ended. Did you think I was bluffing?" He glared at me with impotent rage. "What do you want?" "An apology. To me in front of the other family heads. Public acknowledgement that you overstepped, and that the Vieira territories are off limits." "You can't be serious." "Completely serious. You challenged my authority, tried to make me look weak. Now you pay the price. Publicly." I leaned forward. "And Dario? If you ever come at me again, I won't just destroy your cash flow. I'll destroy everything you've built. Your businesses, your reputation, your family's standing. I'll erase the Marchetti name from this city's memory. Are we clear?" The hatred in his eyes was palpable, but he nodded. "Crystal." The public apology came 2 days later, at a gathering Leon arranged. All the family heads witnessed Dario Marchetti formally acknowledge that he had misread the situation regarding the North Side territories, and that he respected Ginevra Vieira's authority over Vieira operations. It was humiliating for him, and everyone knew it. But it also sent a clear message. I wasn't to be underestimated. That night, when I called Elio for our weekly update, his first words were, "I heard about Dario. News travels fast." Leon called me, said you handled it brilliantly. Pride colored his voice. Better than I could have. You would have just killed him, I pointed out. Exactly, which would have solved the immediate problem but created long-term complications. Your way was cleaner, smarter. He paused. I'm in awe of you, Ginevra. You've exceeded every expectation. High praise from a man who didn't want me, I teased, referencing our beginning. The stupidest words I ever spoke, he replied seriously. If I could go back and shake sense into my past self, I would. No need, we got here eventually. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. How's recovery going? Ahead of schedule. Dr. Alba says I might be able to travel home in 3 weeks instead of 6. My heart lifted. That's wonderful. I want to come home, Amore, but I also... He hesitated. I don't want to undermine what you've built. You've proven you can run things without me. I don't want to just swoop back in and take over. It was a concern I hadn't expected from Elio, and it touched something deep inside me. We'll figure it out together, I promised, like we always do. But Elio, I'm ready for you to come home. The Empire is secure, but I miss my partner. Soon, he promised. Very soon. Elio returned to Chicago on a gray November afternoon, exactly 4 weeks after his surgery. I met him at the private airfield with Elena, who shrieked, "Daddy!" and launched herself at him the moment he emerged from the plane. He caught her carefully, mindful of his still healing chest, and I saw tears in his eyes as he held our daughter. Then his gaze found mine over Elena's head, and the love I saw there stole my breath. "Welcome home," I said, suddenly feeling shy despite everything we'd been through. He transferred Elena to Bruno's arms and crossed to me, pulling me into an embrace that was gentle but fierce. "I missed you," he murmured against my hair. "Every single day." "I missed you too." I breathed in his scent, the familiar comfort of him. But we survived, both of us. The ride back to the estate was filled with Elena's chatter about everything Daddy had missed. Elio listened with rapt attention, his hand never leaving mine. But I noticed the way he studied me too, assessing, calculating, trying to figure out how much had changed in his absence. Everything had changed, but we wouldn't address that with Elena present. That evening, after Elena was tucked in and the household had settled, Elio and I finally found ourselves alone in our bedroom. "You look different," he observed, pouring us both wine despite his doctor's orders to limit alcohol. "Harder, more confident." 4 weeks of running your empire will do that. I accepted the glass. Did you expect me to stay the same? No. He sat beside me on the sofa by the fireplace. But I didn't expect you to flourish quite so completely. Leon said you handled Dario with more finesse than I've shown in 15 years of leadership. Leon exaggerates. Does he? Elio's gaze was penetrating. Because from what I heard, you systematically destroyed Dario's operation without firing a single shot. That's not just competence, Ginevra. That's genius. I shifted uncomfortably under his scrutiny. I did what needed to be done. You did more than that. You changed how this organization operates. He set down his glass. Bruno told me about the new protocols you implemented. The electronic record keeping, the encrypted communications, the reorganization of territories for maximum efficiency. You've modernized things I've been too set in my ways to change. I saw inefficiencies and corrected them. You saw opportunities and seized them. He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. You're not my stand-in anymore, are you? You're a leader in your own right. The observation hung between us, loaded with implications. Does that bother you? I asked quietly. He was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. It should, he finally said. I should feel threatened, worried about losing control. But instead, his thumb traced my cheekbone. I feel relieved, Relieved? For the first time in 20 years, I have a true partner. Someone who can shoulder this burden with me, not just support from the sidelines. His voice grew rough with emotion. You have no idea what that means, Ginevra. How liberating it is to know I'm not alone in this anymore. I set down my own glass and straddled his lap, careful of his healing incision. You were never alone. You just refused to see it. I see it now. His hand settled on my waist. The question is, what do we do about it? What do you mean? I mean the organization has been running smoothly without me. Better than smoothly, actually. The other families respect you. The business is more profitable than ever. And you've proven you don't need me to succeed. He paused. So where does that leave us? I understood what he was really asking. Had my success made him obsolete? It leaves us as partners, I said firmly. Real partners, with equal authority and equal responsibility. I don't want to run things alone, Elio. I want to run them with you. But not as your subordinate or your protege. As your equal. Something like relief washed over his face. Equal partners. Completely equal. We make decisions together. We face threats together. We build this empire together. I leaned in until our foreheads touched. Unless you have a problem with that? A problem with having a brilliant, ruthless, beautiful woman as my co-ruler? His laugh was genuine. I'd be an idiot. And whatever my faults, I'm not that. We sealed the agreement with a kiss that quickly escalated into more, rediscovering each other after weeks apart. He was gentler than usual, still recovering, but no less passionate. And when we finally collapsed together, sated and breathless, I felt something settle into place. We were finally, truly partners in every way that mattered. The next morning brought our first test of this new dynamic. Leon called requesting an emergency meeting. All the family heads, plus several associates from New York and Detroit. Something big was happening. We met them at the usual restaurant, but this time I sat beside Elio at the head of the table rather than slightly behind him. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. "Welcome back," Leon said to Elio, then nodded to me. "Both of you." "What's this about?" Elio asked, his hand finding mine under the table. "The Bratva," Leon said, referencing the Russian mafia. "They're making a major push into the Midwest. They've already absorbed 3 smaller families in Detroit and are setting their sights on Chicago." The Bratva. I'd heard Elio mention them before, always with a mixture of respect and wariness. They were old school, brutal, and commanded resources that rivaled any American organization. "What do they want?" I asked. "Everything," Noel Torres replied grimly. "They want to control all major ports, all smuggling routes, all high-level operations, and they're not interested in negotiating territories. They want complete dominance." "That's not going to happen," Elio said flatly. "Easy to say," Giovanni Russo countered. "Harder to enforce. They have numbers and firepower that we can't match individually." "Then we don't face them individually," I said, an idea forming. "We present a united front." All eyes turned to me. "Explain," Leon prompted. "The 5 families in Chicago have operated independently, occasionally cooperating but mostly guarding our own territories jealously. That works when we're dealing with threats from within the city. But the Bratva isn't a local threat. They're an external invasion." I leaned forward. "What if we formalized our alliance, created a coalition with shared resources, coordinated defense, unified strategy?" "You're talking about a commission," Mario Fabri said slowly. "Like the old days." "I'm talking about survival," I corrected. "Individually, the Bratva can pick us off one by one. Together, we're strong enough to make them think twice about coming here at all." "And who leads this coalition?" Dario Marchetti asked, suspicion in his voice. "Let me guess, the Vieiras." "No one leads," Elio said, understanding immediately where I was going. "We operate as equals, with decisions made by majority vote. The Vieiras have no more authority than the Russos or the Torres or anyone else." "But you have the most resources," Dario pointed out. "Which we'd be sharing," I replied. "Access to our shipping routes, our political connections, our infrastructure, in exchange for the same from all of you. It's not about power. It's about pooling our strengths." Leon was nodding slowly. "It could work. The Bratva's strength is in their unity. We match that. We match their threat." "And when the Bratva threat is neutralized?" Giovanni asked. "What happens to this coalition then?" "That's up to all of us," Elio said. "Maybe we dissolve it. Maybe we discover we work better together than apart. But that's a bridge we cross when we reach it." The debate continued for hours, with concerns raised and addressed, terms negotiated, power structures hammered out. But by the end, we had agreement. The 5 families would form the Chicago Commission, a formal alliance to face the Russian threat. "You realize what you just did?" Elio said as we drove home that evening. "You potentially changed the entire structure of organized crime in this city." "We changed it," I corrected. "Together." "No." He shook his head. "That was your idea, your vision. I just supported it." "That's what partners do," I replied. "We support each other's ideas, make them stronger together." He pulled me close, kissing my temple. "Have I mentioned lately that you're extraordinary?" "Not in the last few hours." "Then I'm overdue." His hand splayed across my stomach. "You're the most remarkable woman I've ever known, Ginevra Vieira. And I'm the luckiest man alive to call you my wife." His words warmed me, but they also reminded me of something I'd been meaning to tell him. Something I'd discovered the week before, but had waited to share in person. "Speaking of family," I began, then hesitated. He pulled back to look at me. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between us. Elio's expression cycled through shock, joy, fear, and back to joy again in the space of seconds. "Pregnant," he repeated, his hand pressing more firmly against my still flat stomach. "How far along?" "About 8 weeks. I found out right before you came home." I searched his face for any sign of displeasure. "Are you happy?" "Happy?" He laughed, the sound pure and unrestrained. "Ginevra, I'm ecstatic. Terrified, but ecstatic." His expression sobered. "You've been running the organization while pregnant? Taking meetings, dealing with threats?" "I'm fine," I interrupted. "The pregnancy is perfectly normal, and I'm not going to stop working just because I'm expecting." "I didn't suggest you should," he said quickly, "but maybe we could dial back some of the more dangerous aspects, at least until after the baby is born." "We'll see," I hedged. "But Elio, I meant what I said. I'm not going back to being the sheltered wife. Pregnant or not, I'm your partner. That doesn't change." "I know." He pulled me fully into his arms, careful of both his healing chest and my growing secret. "And I wouldn't want it to. But you can't blame me for wanting to protect you both." "I don't blame you," I assured him. "As long as you understand that protection and partnership aren't mutually exclusive. You can worry about me and still respect my autonomy." "I'm learning that," he admitted, "though it goes against every instinct I have." "Then keep learning," I said, rising on my toes to kiss him. "Because this baby deserves parents who are equals, who respect each other, who show them that power and love can coexist." "They do coexist," he murmured against my lips. "In you. You're the most powerful person I know, and also the most loving. Our children are lucky to have you. Our children. Plural." The thought filled me with warmth and terror in equal measure. "We're lucky to have each other," I corrected. "Partners in everything." "Partners," he agreed. "Always." The Chicago Commission's first real test came 3 weeks after its formation. The Bratva made their move on a cold December night, hitting one of Mario Fabri's dock operations with overwhelming force. 15 men armed with military-grade weapons, overwhelming the 5 guards on duty and making off with an entire shipment worth $3 million. It was a calculated strike, designed to show that the Russians weren't intimidated by our alliance, and to test whether the Commission would actually stand together or fracture under pressure. Mario called the emergency meeting himself, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "They hit my docks," he said without preamble when we assembled. "Took everything. Killed 2 of my men. Wounded 3 others. This is an act of war." "Agreed," Elio said. "The question is how we respond." "We hit them back," Dario argued. "Twice as hard. Show them what happens when they come into our city." "And lose more men in the process?" I interjected. "The Bratva wants us to react emotionally. They're stronger than us in direct conflict. We need to be smarter." "So what do you suggest?" Giovanni asked. "We just let them steal from us without consequence?" "I suggest we stop playing their game and force them to play ours." I pulled out the intelligence reports Bruno had compiled. The Bratva's strength is in their muscle. But they're new to Chicago, which means they don't have the political connections we do, the legitimate business fronts, the deep roots in the community. "So?" Mario demanded. "So we use those advantages," Elio said, immediately understanding my thinking. "We make operating in Chicago so expensive and complicated for them that the $3 million they stole isn't worth the headache." Over the next hour, we planned our response. Not a shooting war, but something more insidious. We'd use our collective influence to make every aspect of the Bratva's operations in Chicago impossible. Their shipments would be delayed by customs inspections. Their businesses would face constant code violations. Their associates would find themselves under surveillance by law enforcement we controlled. Their money laundering operations would be quietly frozen. Death by 1,000 cuts. "It's elegant," Leon observed. "But will it work?" "It worked on Dario," I replied, ignoring the glare the man in question shot me. "The Bratva are strong, but they're not invincible. Make their operations unprofitable, and they'll go elsewhere." "And if they escalate instead?" Giovanni asked. "Then we escalate too," Elio said. "But we do it as a unified front. They hit one family, all 5 families respond. That's the power of the Commission." The plan was implemented immediately. Within a week, the Bratva's Chicago operations were hemorrhaging money. Every shipment delayed, every business facing fines, every transaction scrutinized. They tried to push back, hitting another of our operations, this time one of Noel's gambling establishments. But the response was swift and coordinated. Within hours, federal agents raided 3 Bratva front companies, seizing assets and arresting key personnel. Message received: "Mess with one of us, you mess with all of us." The Bratva's representative requested a meeting. His name was Alexei Volkov, a man in his 50s with cold eyes and the kind of stillness that came from absolute confidence in his own lethality. He arrived with 4 bodyguards to our 2, a subtle power play. But this time, all 5 family heads attended. A show of unity that wasn't lost on Volkov. "Gentlemen," he greeted us in accented but perfect English. Then his gaze landed on me. "And lady, I did not expect to find a woman at this table." "Then your intelligence is lacking," I replied coolly. "I'm Ginevra Vieira, co-head of the Vieira family and representative on the Chicago Commission." Something like amusement flickered in his eyes. The Bratva could learn from Chicago's progressiveness. "The Bratva could learn a lot of things from Chicago," Elio said, "starting with the fact that this city is not available for conquest." Volkov's smile faded. You have cost us significant money with your interference in our operations. You cost us 3 million and 2 lives, Mario shot back. Consider it interest. I came to propose a truce, Volkov continued. The Bratva acknowledges that Chicago is well defended. We are willing to negotiate a division of territories and operations that allows both our organizations to profit. It was more than I'd expected, honestly. The fact that they were willing to negotiate at all meant our strategy was working. What exactly are you proposing? Leon asked. The negotiation lasted 3 hours. The Bratva wanted access to our port facilities for their shipping operations. In exchange, they'd stay out of our gambling, construction, and political spheres. They wanted a foothold, not domination. We need to discuss this privately, Elio said finally. Give us 24 hours. After Volkov and his men left, the real debate began. We can't trust them, Dario insisted. This is just a ploy to get inside our operations. Probably, I agreed. But it's also an acknowledgement that they can't take Chicago by force. That's a win. A partial win, Giovanni corrected. If we let them in, even in a limited capacity, we're giving them a foothold they can expand later. But if we refuse, Leon pointed out, we're guaranteeing continued conflict. More violence, more loss of life, more resources spent on defense instead of profit. The argument continued, with valid points on all sides. Finally, Elio called for a vote. All in favor of accepting the Bratva's proposal with strict monitoring and enforcement protocols? Leon, Noel, and Mario raised their hands. All opposed? Giovanni and Dario. A split vote, which according to our commission bylaws meant we needed further negotiation. I have a compromise, I suggested. We accept their proposal with a 6-month trial period. If they honor the agreement, we extend it. If they violate any terms, the deal is void, and we go back to full opposition. That way we're not committing long-term, but we're also not throwing away a chance for peace. The men exchanged glances. Slowly, even Dario nodded. I can live with that, Giovanni said. The modified proposal was presented to Volkov the next day. He accepted with minimal pushback, recognizing it as the best deal he was likely to get. You have surprising wisdom for one so young, he told me as we finalized the agreement. In Russia, women are not permitted such authority. In Chicago, I replied, we've learned that talent has no gender. Perhaps Russia could benefit from similar enlightenment. His laugh was genuine. Perhaps, though I think it will be many years before my countrymen agree. After the Russians left, Leon approached me with an expression I couldn't quite read. That was well done, he said. The compromise, the negotiation, the way you handled Volkov. Elio couldn't have managed it better. Elio would have told them to go to hell, and consequences be damned, I replied. Exactly. Leon smiled. Which is why you're good for him. You temper his instincts with strategy. We balance each other, I said. That's what partnership means. Leon's expression grew serious. There are some in the organization who question whether Chicago needs 2 Vierias in charge, who think Elio should resume sole control now that he's recovered. I felt a chill. And what do you think? I think they're idiots, Leon said bluntly. I think you've proven yourself 10 times over. And I think anyone who can't see that you and Elio are stronger together than apart is blind to how power actually works. His words bolstered me, but the knowledge that some questioned my authority stung. That night, I mentioned it to Elio as we prepared for bed. Bruno mentioned the same thing, he admitted. There's a faction, small but vocal, that thinks I should reassert dominance, that our equal partnership makes us look weak. And what do you think? I asked, suddenly uncertain. He pulled me close, his hands framing my face. I think they're wrong. I think our partnership makes us stronger. More balanced, more strategic, more resilient. You've proven that while I was gone. But if it's causing division in the ranks, then we address it directly, he interrupted. We make it clear that this is how the Vieira family operates now, together. And anyone who has a problem with that can find employment elsewhere. That could be risky, pushing out experienced men because they don't like reporting to a woman. It's riskier to keep people who don't respect our leadership structure, he countered. Loyalty works both ways, Ginevra. I'm loyal to you, and I expect the same from everyone who works for us. The next day, Elio called a meeting of all Vieira lieutenants and associates. Nearly 50 men gathered in the estate's ballroom, curious and wary. Elio stood at the front with me beside him, presenting a united front. There have been questions, he began without preamble, about the leadership structure of the Vieira family. Some of you are uncomfortable with the idea of answering to my wife with the same deference you show me. So let me make this absolutely clear. Ginevra Vieira is not my assistant, not my advisor, not my subordinate. She is my equal partner in every aspect of our operations. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I understand this is a change from tradition, Elio continued, and I understand some of you have concerns. So I'm giving you a choice. You can accept this new structure and continue to work for the Vieira family with all the benefits and protections that entails. Or you can leave, with a generous severance package and no hard feelings. But if you stay, I added, stepping forward, you work for both of us. You show me the same respect, the same loyalty, the same obedience you show Elio. There will be no distinction, no hierarchy between us. Are we clear? The silence that followed was heavy. Then Bruno stepped forward. Crystal clear, Mrs. Vieira. And for what it's worth, I think this family is stronger with both of you leading it. One by one, the others nodded agreement. A few looked uncertain, but none chose to leave. By the end of the meeting, our authority was reinforced. Not everyone was happy about it, but everyone accepted it. That went better than expected, I said afterward. You expected a revolt? Elio asked, amused. I expected more pushback. I leaned against him, suddenly exhausted. The pregnancy was making itself known with increasing fatigue. They know better than to push back, he said. You've earned their respect through action, not just through being my wife. That carries weight. As winter deepened and my pregnancy progressed, our partnership solidified. We developed a rhythm. Elio handling the more traditional aspects of the business, the face-to-face meetings and negotiations where his reputation carried weight. Me handling the strategic planning, the political maneuvering, the modernization efforts. Together, we were formidable. The Bratva honored their agreement, restricting their operations to the agreed-upon parameters. The commission proved its worth, coordinating responses to various threats and opportunities with increasing efficiency. And in our private moments, Elio and I rediscovered each other. Not as patient and wife in the traditional sense, but as true partners building something together. Do you ever regret it? I asked one night as we lay in bed, his hand resting on my growing belly. Giving up sole control? Never, he said without hesitation. I'm happier now than I've been in 20 years. Not because I have less responsibility, but because I'm not carrying it alone anymore. Our son, we'd learned the gender that week, kicked against his palm, and Elio's face lit up with wonder. He's strong, he observed, like his father, and brilliant like his mother. Elio kissed me softly. With both our traits, he'll be unstoppable. Or completely unmanageable, I countered. That too. His smile faded into something more serious. Ginevra, I need to tell you something. My heart clenched. What? When I was in Switzerland recovering from surgery, I had a lot of time to think. About my life, my choices, my legacy. He paused. I realized that everything I'd built, all the power and territory and influence, it meant nothing if I didn't have someone to share it with, someone who truly understood it. Elio, let me finish. His thumb traced circles on my wrist. You saved me. Not just by finding that medical file, not just by forcing me to have the surgery. You saved me from becoming my father, from dying alone and bitter, surrounded by people who feared me but didn't love me. Tears pricked my eyes. You're not your father. I was becoming him. Before you, I was already halfway there. Cold, isolated, trusting no one. His voice roughened. You changed that. You made me believe that power and love could coexist, that strength and vulnerability weren't mutually exclusive, that I could be both a leader and a husband, both feared and loved. You taught me those things too, I whispered. How to be strong without being cruel, how to command respect without demanding it, how to build instead of destroy. Then we saved each other, he said simply, and we'll continue saving each other, every day, for the rest of our lives. It was a promise and a vow, more meaningful than our wedding ceremony had been. Outside, snow began to fall over Chicago, blanketing the city in white. But inside our bedroom, warmth surrounded us. The warmth of partnership, of love, of a future we were building together. Brick by brick, decision by decision, challenge by challenge. Together. I went into labor during a commission meeting. Not ideal timing, but then, our son had never been one for convenience. At 7 months pregnant, I'd insisted on continuing to attend all important meetings, despite Elio's concerned protests. This is a critical negotiation with the Detroit families, I'd argued that morning. I need to be there. You need to be resting, he'd countered. You're due in 6 weeks, which means I have 6 weeks to continue working. He'd given up arguing, knowing it was futile. But I'd seen the worry in his eyes. The meeting was proceeding smoothly, a discussion about expanding our coalition model to other cities, when the first contraction hit. Sharp, unmistakable, and far too intense for Braxton Hicks. I gripped the edge of the table, breathing through it. Elio noticed immediately. Ginevra? I'm fine, I managed. Just... The second contraction cut off my words, and suddenly the room was in motion. Elio was beside me. Leon was calling for Dr. Caesar. The other family heads were clearing out with remarkable speed. The baby's not due for 6 weeks, I gasped between contractions. Apparently he has other plans, Elio said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic as he helped me to the car. The ride to the hospital was a blur of pain and fear. Too early, the baby was coming too early. What if something was wrong? What if... He'll be fine, Elio said, reading my thoughts as he always did. You're both going to be fine. I wanted to believe him. Needed to believe him. Dr. Caesar met us at the hospital with a team of specialists. Premature labor, he confirmed after a quick examination. We'll try to slow it, but if we can't, we're prepared for an early delivery. They couldn't slow it. Our son was determined to make his entrance ahead of schedule. 8 hours later, Marco Elio Vieira entered the world weighing 5 pounds, 4 ounces, and screaming with impressive lung capacity for such a small human. He's perfect, Dr. Caesar assured us, as nurses whisked our son away to the NICU for monitoring. Small, but healthy. He'll need to stay in the hospital for a few weeks to gain weight and strengthen his lungs, but I see no cause for concern. Relief made me dizzy. Elio was pale, gripping my hand so tightly I thought he might break bones. He's okay? He asked, his voice raw. He's really okay? He's really okay, the doctor confirmed. Only then did Elio collapse into the chair beside my bed, his face in his hands. I realized he was crying. Not quiet tears, but great shaking sobs of relief and terror and overwhelming emotion. I reached for him, pulling his head to my chest, and we cried together. "I thought I was going to lose you both," he choked out. When the labor started early, all I could think was that this was my punishment. For lying to you about my heart, for putting you through that stress. "Stop," I interrupted firmly. "This isn't punishment. This is life. Complicated, messy, beautiful life. And we got through it. Together." He lifted his head, his eyes red but clear. Together. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. I divided my time between the hospital, where Marco was slowly gaining weight and strength, and the estate, where business continued to demand attention. "You should be resting," Elio insisted for the 100th time as I reviewed shipping manifest in the NICU waiting room. "I'll rest when Marco comes home," I countered. "Until then, I might as well be productive." He knew better than to argue. Instead, he simply took half the manifests and worked beside me, both of us keeping vigil over our son through the nursery window. Leon visited weekly, bringing updates on commission business, and refusing to discuss anything too stressful in my presence. "You just had a baby," he'd said. "The world can wait." But the world rarely waited for anyone. On Marco's 15th day of life, as Elio and I sat beside his incubator watching him sleep, Dr. Cesar approached with an expression that made my heart sink. "There's been a development," he said carefully. "Nothing concerning Marco's health," he added quickly, seeing our faces. "But there's someone here demanding to see you both. A man named Victor Kozlov." Elio's face went completely still. "Kozlov is here? In Chicago?" "Who's Kozlov?" I asked. "The Bratva's second in command," Elio said grimly. "Alexei Volkov's boss. What does he want?" "To talk, apparently. He's in the waiting room with 6 bodyguards. Hospital security is nervous." Elio looked at me, the question clear in his eyes. "Let's hear what he has to say," I decided. "But not here. Not near Marco." We met Kozlov in a private conference room the hospital made available. He was older than Volkov, 60s perhaps, with iron-gray hair and eyes like chips of ice. But when he saw me, still clearly recovering from childbirth, something almost like respect crossed his face. "Mrs. Vieira," he greeted me in heavily accented English. "Congratulations on your son's birth." "Thank you," I replied cautiously. "Though I doubt you came all the way to Chicago to offer congratulations." A smile tugged at his lips. "Direct. I like this. Volkov said you were unusual woman." "What do you want, Kozlov?" Elio asked bluntly. "To make proposal." Kozlov settled into his chair with the confidence of a man accustomed to being the most dangerous person in any room. "The Bratva is expanding operations in United States. But we have difficulty with local organizations. They do not trust us, do not cooperate. There is much conflict, much expense. And," I prompted, "and Chicago is different. Here there is commission. Here 5 families work together, make alliance. Is smart, efficient, profitable." He leaned forward. "The Bratva wishes to learn from this model, to propose similar arrangement in other cities." I exchanged a glance with Elio. This was unexpected. "You want to form commissions in other cities?" I asked. "Want to work with you to form commissions," Kozlov corrected. "Chicago commission as model, as, how you say, consultant. You help us establish cooperation with American families. We share profits from peaceful expansion instead of expensive war." "You're asking us to franchise our alliance structure," Elio said slowly. "Is good business, yes." Kozlov spread his hands. "We all profit. Less violence, more money. The Bratva gets foothold in American markets. American families get piece and share of Russian operations. Everybody wins. It was brilliant, actually, and completely unprecedented. This would require buy-in from all commission families, I said. We don't make unilateral decisions. I understand. Is why I come to you both. You are leaders, yes? Other families follow your guidance. We'll need guarantees, Elio said. Contracts, enforcement mechanisms, neutral arbitration for disputes. All can be arranged. Kozlov stood. I give you time to discuss with partners. But Mrs. Vieira, his gaze fixed on me, I think you understand what I offer. Is chance to change how this business operates in America. Less like warring tribes, more like corporation, more civilized. After he left, Elio and I sat in silence for a long moment. He's not wrong, I finally said. The commission model works. If we could replicate it in other cities, coordinate resources and responses across regions, we'd fundamentally reshape organized crime in America, Elio finished. Create something unprecedented. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? He considered. I think it's an inevitable thing. The old way. Families fighting each other for scraps. It's unsustainable. Cooperation is the future. We've already proven that here. Then we present it to the commission, I decided. Let them vote. If they support it, we move forward. If not, we still have our local alliance, Elio said. But Ginevra, if they support this, you realize what it means? You'd be helping to build a national organization. That's a level of influence beyond anything my father or grandfather ever dreamed of. Good, I said simply. Let them see what a woman can build when given the chance. His smile was full of pride and love. They're going to underestimate you, right up until the moment you prove them wrong. The commission voted in favor of exploring Kozlov's proposal, with the caveat that all arrangements be carefully structured and legally protected. I spent the next months, while Marco grew stronger and finally came home, while I recovered my strength and returned to full operations, negotiating the framework for what would become the National Cooperative. It was delicate work, balancing the Bratva's needs with American families' suspicions, creating structures that protected everyone while advancing the collective good. Leon was invaluable, his decades of experience and widespread respect opening doors that would have remained closed to me alone. By Marco's first birthday, we had pilot programs running in 3 cities, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Miami, all modeled on the Chicago Commission, all showing promising results. You've created something remarkable, Leon told me at Marco's birthday party, watching as Elena helped her baby brother smash his cake. Your children will grow up in a very different world than we did. That's the idea, I replied. A world where cooperation is valued over conquest, where intelligence matters more than violence, where women like me have a place at the table without having to fight for every scrap of respect. You've already changed that, Leon said. Even the most traditional families acknowledge your authority now. You've proven yourself too many times to dismiss. As the party continued, I watched Elio playing with our children, his laughter genuine and unguarded, so different from the cold, controlled man I'd married. He caught my eye and smiled, and I saw in that smile everything we'd built together. An empire, yes, but more than that, a partnership, a family, a future. That night, after the children were asleep and the estate was quiet, Elio and I stood in our bedroom balcony, looking out over Chicago. Do you remember what you said when you found out about my heart condition? He asked, pulling me against his chest. Which part? I said a lot of things. You said you refused to be helpless, that you wanted the tools to protect yourself. His arms tightened around me. You've gone so far beyond that, Ginevra. You haven't just protected yourself. You've protected all of us. You've built something that will outlast both of us. We built it together, I corrected. No. He turned me to face him. I may have laid the foundation, but you built the structure. The national cooperative, the modernization of operations, the diplomatic approach to conflict. That's all you. And the strength to implement it came from watching you, I countered. From learning from you. We've always been better together than apart, Elio. Better together, he agreed, pressing his forehead to mine. Which is why I have a proposal. Another one? The most important one. He pulled back slightly. I want to formalize our partnership. Not just in practice, but legally. Equal shares in all holdings, equal authority in all decisions, equal recognition as heads of the Vieira family. We already have that, I pointed out. We have it in practice. I want it in writing, in contracts and legal documents that can't be challenged. So that if something happens to me, you don't have to fight for control. It's already yours. Tears stung my eyes. You're not going to die, Elio. Dr. Alba said your heart is stronger than ever. I know, but I've learned not to take anything for granted. His thumb brushed away a tear that escaped. You saved my life, Ginevra. Twice. Once by finding that medical file and forcing me to face my mortality. And once by showing me that life is worth living, not just surviving. You saved mine too, I whispered. You gave me purpose, power, partnership. You saw me as more than just a strategic asset. You saw me as an equal. I see you as extraordinary, he corrected, as someone who took a broken man's empire and made it into something better, something sustainable and forward-thinking, something our children can be proud of. We stood there for a long time, holding each other under the Chicago stars, two people who had started with rejection and fear and somehow built something beautiful from those ashes. I don't regret anything, I said finally. Not the pain, not the challenges, not even that awful wedding day when I overheard you saying you didn't want me, because all of it led us here. To this moment, he agreed, to this life we've built, to these children sleeping in their rooms, blissfully unaware that their parents run half the organized crime in America. I laughed, the sound startling in the quiet night. When you put it that way. When I put it that way, it sounds insane, he finished. But it's our insanity, our empire, our legacy. Our salvation, I added, echoing the theme that had defined us from the beginning. Because that's what we've been for each other. Not just partners, but saviors. Saving each other from loneliness, from fear, from becoming the worst versions of ourselves. And isn't that what love is? He asked. Not flowers and poetry, but the willingness to pull someone back from the edge, to say I see your darkness and I choose you anyway. Yes, I breathed. That's exactly what love is. We kissed then, soft and sweet and full of promise. The kiss of partners who had been through fire and emerged stronger. The kiss of parents protecting their children's future. The kiss of two leaders building an empire together. When we finally pulled apart, Elio's eyes were bright with emotion. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For being exactly who you are, for refusing to be diminished or controlled. For saving me when I didn't even know I needed saving. His voice grew rough. For loving me despite everything I am, everything I've done. Thank you for the same, I replied. For seeing past the sheltered girl to the woman who could stand beside you. For trusting me with your empire, your life, your heart. Always, he promised, for as long as we both live. It was a vow more binding than any wedding ceremony, spoken under stars that had witnessed countless other promises. But ours felt different, forged in pain and betrayal and hard-won trust. Ours felt permanent. As we returned inside, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the bedroom mirror. The powerful couple, perfectly matched. No longer the rejected bride and the cold groom, but equals in every way that mattered. And tomorrow we would wake up and continue building. Continue leading. Continue proving that power didn't have to corrupt. That love could coexist with ambition. That a woman could command the same respect as any man if she was willing to fight for it. But tonight, we simply held each other. Two people who had found salvation in the last place they expected. In each other.